Shalom, everybody. Every now and then I come out with something that I write, and I feel that it's a really important message to get across. So obviously, I publish it and I send it out to our KosherTorah school students. But every now and then I get something that I really feel strongly about that needs to be shared publicly beyond the boundaries of our school. And this essay, which I'm about to read to you, is one of those. It's entitled Torah from Sinai, the Telepathic Connection. It really explains about the psychic connection that opened up at Mount Sinai, what we think is long ago, but we have to re-understand that. So I'm going to read to you this essay, and here in the section here, you'll see I'll put down a link to the PDF, so you'll have access to it if you want to read along with it. There is an explanation of a holy name, Shem Kadosh, in here, and I am planning to have that put on the screen here so you can actually look at it as opposed to look at me. I mean, all due respect, everybody does videos these days and they put, themselves on camera. I don't know why anybody wants to see me. I mean, you already know what I look like. I consider it a waste of time. I'd much rather you be looking at holy names and imagining them, focusing on them, thinking about them than me. All right. So as we continue now, I'm going to read to you Torah from Sinai, the telepathic connection. The Torah comes from Mount Sinai, all of it. Even the prophecies of all the later prophets come from Mount Sinai. Even the Torah of the sages, from generation to generation, all comes from Mount Sinai. All Torah, past, present, and future, comes from Mount Sinai. Reference Yitro Rabbah 28:6. Sinai is the source of Torah, but we must understand what exactly this means. For when we look at the Torah's story at face value, we're led to believe that Mount Sinai is just a physical mountain in the Sinai Peninsula. When we think about Torah being revealed at Mount Sinai, we immediately think historically to the time when Moses stood there with the children of Israel. Now, again, at face value, all of this is true, and yet there's so much more to the Torah than its simple face value. And thus, there's more to the identity of Sinai than just being a big old mountain in the desert. As we know, Torah transcends both space and time. And so does Sinai. Sinai exists as a mountain in the desert, but it is more than just that. The receiving of Torah at Sinai occurred historically in the days of Moses, but receiving of Torah is not locked into one finite moment in time. Torah comes forth from Sinai always. Torah is always coming forth from Sinai. The flow of Torah from Sinai is constant. It never ends. And one who stands before Sinai will receive the Torah. But this Sinai of which I speak is not the mountain in the desert. For from the Sinai of which I speak, a heavenly voice, Bat Kol, cries out daily, woe to the world for the disgrace shown the Torah. Pirkei Avot 6:2. Another name for Sinai is Horeb, spelled Het Vav Resh Bet, with a numerical value of 216. This alternative name reveals a secret aspect of Sinai. This number 216 is equal to 3 times the number 72. Those familiar with sacred numbers and the names of God concealed within the Torah text will be familiar with this number. This number 216 is the numerical value of the words Gevurah, horse, and Aryeh, lion. Prophecy is related to the roar of the lion, reference Amos 3:8. Horeb, another name for Sinai, this is the one that hints to the concealment of the force of prophecy. 216 is also the number of the letters that make up the 72 triad holy name. This sacred name, when wielded properly, can open one's consciousness to experience the heavenly voice of the Bat Kol. So Horeb brings one to the Bat Kol, and Sinai brings one to the Torah. This is true in all times and in all space. The voice spoken from Sinai, Horeb, It's not a physical voice, for there is no physicality above. The voice that forever comes forth from Sinai is not audible to the human ear, but those who know how to listen, the voice is heard within one's mind, within one's heart. The voice from Sinai, Horeb, is thus telepathic. It can only be heard by those who know how to listen. The prophets of old understood this and listened with care and patience. The sages of the Torah, to this day, also exercise care and clairvoyance, so that they too can tune in to the perennial divine broadcast. Torah is eternal. Sinai is the telepathic conduit through which Torah is received in the minds and hearts of human beings. The children of Israel received the telepathic communication when they stood at the foot of the physical mountain so many centuries ago. Ever since then, the spiritual children of the children of Israel trained themselves so as to continue to receive the divine broadcast. Torah is received telepathically. It is etched directly into one's mind and heart. This is how prophecy was received. And this is how, to this day, the sages receive wisdom. The echo of the voice of Torah is experienced internally, and it reveals the way and wisdom for external expression. So, let us now discuss how does one actually receive telepathic Torah? And more importantly, how does one recognize that it is truly Torah being received from Sinai and not a trick of one's imagination, or worse, a reception from a deceptive source? Now, when we discuss receptivity in the mind, we must recognize the obvious, and that is that the realm of the spiritual and the realm of the psychological are indeed one and the same. Therefore, telepathic Torah is a psychological phenomenon, and it needs to be understood as such. In this light, we can address how such Torah is received and how it is recognized to be true or false. In order to understand this matter, I must introduce you to the subject of archetypes, the symbolic imagery of the human mind, which is the language of both dreams and prophetic visions. We do not need to delve too academically into this subject. Indeed, to intellectualize matters of the psyche and the heart actually does damage to both. We do not turn off the intellect, but we still relegate it to a subservient position so as to allow the imagination to independently run its course. And so with the imagination, we begin. Thoughts are things, real things, and so too are feelings. Some thoughts can be easily expressed with words, but feelings are not so easily expressed with words. Now, there are valid reasons for this. When it comes to describing things from the world outside of us, we can use the context of physicality to create mental forms and structures similar to external ones. These forms then help our intellects to relate to the concepts being described. This is the process of verbal language. But there are other languages that are non-verbal. The reality of one's inner space, the recesses of one's subconscious and unconscious mind, are as real, and if not more so, than anything related to the external world. It is in these realms of the subconscious and the unconscious that intellect cannot clearly reach. For the internal realms do not relate to the external realms. The two are different and often at odds with one another. The internal realm is not limited to the confines of intellect, nor is it limited to the confines of the organic brain, physically operating within our heads. The reality of one's inner space is often perceived through a combination of emotionally based images that are coupled with pictorial representations that are extracted from one's memory. Each pictorial representation is chosen by the unconscious to serve as an emotionally charged image so as to get across to the conscious mind a message from the unconscious that is deeply rooted within one's psyche. This message is one of inner knowing that often contradicts the ways and methods of learning from external sources. Inner space reality is not limited to the confines of one's mind or brain. Inner space reality is where the higher unconscious part of the mind selves interacts with and merges with higher dimensions of being, those entities that indigenously inhabit those realms. Many times our unconscious impressions come into the minds from contact with one or more of these higher dimensional beings. Now, these are normally felt as deeply rooted impressions, and more often than not, they come to us while in a dream state, such as in sleep. Upon awakening, the conscious mind remembers impressions about a dream, all the while that the visionary aspect of it remains unclear and often bizarre. The intellectual mind naturally and normally does not understand the archetypal imagery used by the unconscious to communicate with it deeply felt truths. And thus dreams often remain a mystery to the conscious mind. This is a clear example of the difference between external knowledge and internal knowing. The Torah itself is considered to be far more than just a book or a scroll. The Torah is a living, sentient entity with a mind of its own. The form of Torah that we now have as a book is only a garment of words written on a page. In order for one to experience the Torah and to develop a relationship with its identity and personality, one must reach into the Torah from that place where the Torah can be reached. And this place is one's inner space. This is the underlying reason why many Torah commandments revolve around the importance of placing Torah upon one's heart. Intellect and mind are not mentioned, only heart is. The mention of heart is a reference to one's inner space, not a reference to one's intellectual mind. So any biblical reference to heart is the same as a psychological reference to one's psyche, be it the subconscious or the unconscious. Throughout the centuries, prophets and sages alike would contemplate words of Torah, pondering them in their minds. They would use their intellects to analyze the words to extract their external world applications. And yet, as they contemplated and pondered, other thoughts would come into their minds, emanating from within the hidden depths of the Torah itself. So rather than dismiss these thoughts as fanciful imagination, the prophets and sages would entertain such thoughts and allow those thoughts to bring them into a deeper state of thinking, similar to daydreaming. In this state, one's unconscious mind would activate the symbolic archetypes active within one's memory, and thus communicate with one's conscious mind, now in a daydreaming type trance, sending to it deeper revelations about the Torah, far deeper than that which can be accessed by mere intellect alone. Once one's unconscious mind, not being limited to the confines of one's brain and body, travels in higher dimensions, and if properly guided, can end up at the psychic location, which we call Sinai. It is from here that the prophet and sage received the Torah from Sinai. And this Torah is fully a part of the Torah that Moses received there long ago. The Torah that Moses received and the Torah received by the later prophets and sages are one. They are connected like links of a chain, and thus all true Torah transmission from one generation to another is called the Masorah, the continuity of Torah from Sinai. This explains prophetic and rabbinic authority. Acquiring this level of Torah consciousness is not too difficult a task. It is accomplished by a select few in every generation. Usually, the contact made by one is accomplished without specific intent to do so, and therefore such receivers are at a loss to describe or to teach how they accomplished what they did. But with our present understanding of the psychology and psychism of spirituality, we are in a position to offer training techniques that can assist any individual who wishes to come before Sinai to do so. This psychological process should rightly be called by its biblical name, Kedusha, holiness. Yet this too needs to be understood correctly in order for it to be used properly. Kedusha, holiness, is the state achieved when one is able to separate one's mind and thoughts from all forms of distraction that clouds one's inner perception of the continual presence of Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. For the presence of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the ultimate truth. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the source of prophecy. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the voice of Torah. One meets Yud-Kei Vav-Kei at Sinai, and from there receives the word of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem, which is the Torah. Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Sinai, and Torah. These three, when properly united in mind and consciousness, opens the inner doorway for one to receive them all. Before I progress to discuss actual practices that will psychologically assist one in rising into this Sinai level of consciousness, let me explain the process Kabbalistically, using the terms of the Sephirot. We live in the physical world, represented by the Sephirah Malchut. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem, is in heaven, represented by the Sephirah Sephirot. What lies between these two are the Sephirot Nahi, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. In the path of ascent, Yesod is closest to Malchut, and thus Yesod is the first state to be experienced. Yesod is libido, life force energy. It is the raw passion of creativity. In the language of the Arizal, this is the energy that creates Ma'im Nukbin, man, feminine waters. This passion arouses one to bond with above. Netzach and Hod are the forms of the Torah that manifest wealth and blessings in the world. Thus, one seeks to bond with Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem, in Tiferet, for the sake of bringing wealth and blessings from Netzach and Hod to earth, Malchut. And this is only accomplished through the focused passion and desire of Yesod. It is known that Netzach and Hod are the sources of prophecy. This is because Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is manifest through them as they manifest in Malchut through Yesod. Thus, Nahi is essentially the Sephirotic place of Sinai. And now that I've described the Kabbalah of the practice, let's discuss it psychologically and practically. Sinai is a state of consciousness that transcends the limitations of the conscious mind that is bound to rational intellect and the perception of the physicality of things. One must expand one's thinking process to go beyond the limits of physical perceptions, realities, and limitations. One must believe that the power of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei permeates all and can thus alter and change all. Acknowledging the concept is not enough. One must generate the raw passion of creativity in order to feel it and to experience the divine presence personally. One must cultivate what we call Yud-Kei Vav-Kei consciousness. In order to accomplish this, one begins by surrounding oneself with representations of the holy name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. One literally fulfills the verse, I place, Shviti, Hashem before me always. Psalm 16, verse 8. Traditionally, this is accomplished by having a number of Shvitis surrounding one in one's private domain, house, apartment, or office, wherever one spends the majority of one's time. One must gaze constantly at the holy name, even when no Shviti is present. Even with one's eyes closed, one should constantly imagine the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in one's mind at all times. Following an Abulafian tradition, one should imagine and visualize the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei as if it is taking the form of a human-type entity within one's mind. One can then talk with this entity within one's imagination as if one were having an actual conversation with another human being. And one who allows one's imagination free rein will allow the nature of this imaginary dialogue to take on a life of its own without restricting its expression, and definitely without condemning the practice as imaginary nonsense. I assure you that the name YHWH is not nonsense. Once you start to commune with it inside the privacy of your own mind, you will see that the name YHWH will come alive and start to place impressions into your thoughts. This is the beginning of actual telepathic communication. We call this Ruach HaKodesh. But I strongly advise you, this cannot and will not happen unless one has the raw passion for it to happen. And then the clarity of one's inner dialogue will reflect the level of how much one has surrounded oneself with the holy name and how much one has focused one's attention on bonding with it. If one merely makes the attachment to the holy name an academic exercise without the necessary passion, then nothing real will occur. Ascent begins with libido from yesod passion. Thus, no passion means no ascent. Rational intellect alone here becomes an anchor that weighs one down and prevents one's mind from achieving the necessary imagination in order to receive new and enlightening revelations. One must cultivate a private and a personal direct relationship with YHWH and speak with him through his name always, just as if one were speaking with one's best friend. The more one cultivates this relationship, the easier it will become to enter into higher states of consciousness corresponding to Nahi. This is where one's imagination will take over one's rational intellect and introduce thoughts into one's mind that do not come from the outside external world, but rather come from above. The one who successfully reaches this state stands before Sinai and receives Torah directly from YHWH. While such Torah may not today be prophecy, it most certainly can be Ruach HaKodesh. It all depends upon the level of holiness, kedusha, that one cultivates in one's life. This entire process is simultaneously a spiritual and a psychological one. So again, essentially, the two are one and the same. Another way to bypass the rational intellect and to attempt to jumpstart the imaginative faculty is the usage of what we call a Shem Kadosh, a holy name. In actuality, what we use is a combination of words knit together to form a holy mantra of sorts. The continuous focused repetition of this Shem Kadosh literally bores the rational mind and puts it to sleep, daydream, or otherwise. The best way to make use of this tool is for one to isolate oneself in a place where one will not be disturbed. Often, early morning hours are chosen, when one's family members are asleep and thus unable to disturb one. Also, with the majority of the world around one quiet and asleep, one is better able to concentrate upon what one needs to do. In order to make contact with psychic Sinai, we take 3 4-letter words, and we merge them in accordance to a formula called Seter Pach. This is the same formula used to create the 72 triad name. The first word or line of text is written straightforward. The second word or line of text is written backwards. The third line is then written straightforward. We then pair off the letters, first, second, third, fourth, and so on. So the acronym Seter stands for this process. S is Sof, final line. T is Toch, middle line. And R is Rosh, first line. Pach is the order of the vowels. This comes from the 2 words found in the Torah, Pituche Hotam, which includes all 5 of the base vowels, A, E, I, O, U, which in Hebrew are Kamatz, Tzereh, Chirik, Holam, and Shuruk. And this then is the formula. Now, let's put it into practice. The 3 words that we will use for this Shem Kadosh are YHWH from Tiferet, Sinai, from Nahi, and Torah, Malchut. The union of these three is our focus. So in accordance to our formula, YHWH is written straight. Sinai is written backwards, and Torah is written straight. The numerical value of these three words, when combined, is 796. Interestingly, this gematria is equal to the term Zman Cherutenu, or the time of our freedom. This term, in the physical sense, is more appropriate for Pesach, and is indeed part of the Pesach prayers. However, making contact with Sinai, be it on the holiday of Shavuot or at any other time of the year, is a psychically liberating experience. So the moment of contact truly becomes one's personal time of freedom. Another interesting gematria for 796 is Metatron Melech HaMashiach, Metatron, King Messiah. Metatron is the collective of all human souls. It is the higher soul, self of collective Israel. Metatron connects us to YHWH, and it is only fitting psychologically and psychically, simply because each of us is a part of Metatron, and thus each of us has a portion of Metatron within us. It is through this portion of our individual higher inner selves, our neshama souls, that we make contact with YHWH. For as we know, the name of Shaddai is within Metatron. Shaddai is the name associated with the Sephirah Yesod. As for the relationship of Metatron to King Mashiach, I've already elaborated upon this in my essay titled The Secret Soul of Mashiach, which is published in my book, Aliens, Angels, and Demons, page 137. The usage of this Shem Kadosh is, again, simple. Have in mind that you have intense emotional passion to bond with psychic Sinai. Imagine the form of a man in your imagination. This is Metatron, the form to which YHWH will speak with you. According to Rabbi Abraham Abulafia, as recorded in his book Sitrei Torah, section 6, Metatron is the garment of the divine presence, the Shekhinah, and is thus the Magid, spirit guide, and angel of the Lord of YHWH, who channels prophecy to the prophets and Torah revelations to the sages. One such sage who made use of a technique similar to this one, and who received many revelations thereby, was Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch. Now, he codified his magnificent halachic work in accordance to his rational intellect. But who can tell how much of his rational intellect was influenced by Ruach HaKodesh, all because of his personal practices that bonded him to the Shekhinah, which is another appellation for psychic Sinai. The 12-letter name that comes forth from the combination of YHWH, Sinai, and Torah is pronounced Yo-Yota, He-Nuwa, Wa-Yore, He-Sahe. Once alone, one should get comfortable. One then contemplates one's desire to bond with above. One then begins to recite this Shem Kadosh over and over again. One must discern for oneself, however one feels most comfortable, whether to recite the name fast or slow, or to calibrate it with one's inhalations and exhalations. All these individual expressions are each well and good. Each individual must feel what is right for oneself, and then to repeat the name in whatever fashion one finds most comfortable. The name can be recited in a whisper or in one's regular voice, but it must be recited out loud. Sound is a form and a thing unto itself. If there is no sound, then there is no thing. So, do not be afraid to recite the name out loud, whatever form you find most comfortable personally. Continue to repeat the name until you fall into a daydream state or fall asleep altogether. Trust in Hashem to guide your unconscious mind to make contact where it needs to. The procedure is tried and true. It works. However, this does not mean that at the moment you will receive profound revelations of psychic clairvoyance. Although this may indeed happen, it usually is not immediate. I've discovered through experience that once contact is made, it is as if our unconscious mind receives the message, and the information only then is passed on to the conscious mind over a period of time, as the conscious mind is able to absorb it. It is as if to say that our minds are being programmed, and that the program will manifest itself and operate when the right time, as decided by heaven, will come. All your thoughts of authentic Torah revelations will thus come from Sinai, from YHWH through his angel, our higher selves, Metatron. And this is how telepathic Torah is received. I have given over to you the system and the operation. Now it's up to you to put it into practice. Remember, I place YHWH before me always. Psalm 16:8. Start with this. Surround yourself with holiness. Purify your mind and your body. This is vital. Without the prerequisite step, no psychic contact is possible. Prepare your vessel in order for it to become full. We all stand together to this day at the foot of Sinai. Once you experience this personally, for yourself, only then will you understand this secret. My blessings to you, one and all. Pay attention to what I just read to you guys. Put it into practice. There is a tremendous amount of accomplishment that one can do. If you wish to practice this as a meditation for the night of Shavuot, by all means do so. But don't think that this is not for every day in every way. So focus on the name YHWH, Shem. Focus on the merging. Bond with the higher world. It's no surprise we're living in very dark and very dangerous times. And that's why, as the verse says, it's time to act for Hashem, because they made void his Torah. This is why I'm revealing these things now. It's for you. If you listen this far into the video, well, okay, you're here for a reason. The wise words of the great sage Hillel, Zeal Gemara. Go now, do this. Thank you for listening. God's blessings. Shalom. Shalom.